Hello, and welcome to Natasha Explains It All. Today's episode is going to be some civic education about how to get in touch with your elected officials. Um, you have the ability to call your elected officials, to write to your elected officials, to visit your elected officials. And I want to provide some guidance on the first of those, most importantly, about how you can call and leave public comment with your elected officials because it is something that you can do. It does make a difference. And I want to empower listeners to know how to do it so that they can feel more engaged and honestly hold elected officials more accountable, which is a needed and good thing. So I'm going to focus this episode primarily on federal elected officials, but this applies for any level of government. And towards the end of the episode, I will be sharing an event actually that's happening in Alameda County, California, that is a training put on by a local organization related to how to give public comment at public hearings. So there'll be a couple of different focuses of this episode, but all around how do I share my opinions and my views with the people who are in office, whose job it is to represent my views and my interests. Okay. So, starting as I mentioned, I'm going to focus on federal officials. So, in the United States, for most of us, we have two senators who represent us in the federal Senate, as well as one representative from the House of Representatives. And so you have three elected officials, in addition to the president, who represents everyone. And so Congress, as I mentioned, there's the House and the Senate. You're going to have one representative in the House and two senators in the Senate. Again, this is generally speaking. If you live in Washington, D.C., for example, you don't have that. You do have a representative in the House, but you don't have any senators because D.C. is not a state. And there are lots of reasons for that, not very justifiable ones in my view, but that is another episode. So, first of all, how do you even find out who represents you? These days, you could just Google who represents you. It's very easy information to obtain, and a lot of websites, if you just put in your address, it will populate with who your um, representative is in the House of Representatives. Your senators are going to be the same in your state, no matter where you live. There's two, and they represent the whole state. But I also want to share a really important number with everyone because this is the congressional switchboard. So if you don't know who your elected representatives are for the federal government in the United States, and or you don't have their numbers, you can just call the Capitol switchboard, and it has a couple of prompts that will direct you to the right offices. And that number is 202 224 3121. Again, 202 224 3121. And that's the congressional switchboard, which will get you connected to your elected officials' offices. So, before I get into the script and how the call will be, a little bit more background. So, every federal official will have a DC office as well as local offices in their home state. And so you will have the option to call their DC office as well as any local offices. And the number I just provided, the 202 224 3121, is to connect you to their DC office. All right. So let's say you've contacted either your representative in the House or your senator in the Senate, and you have, an opinion you want to share. There's a topic that's on your mind and you would like to share it. How do you do that? What do you do when you call their office and someone picks up the phone? First of all, the person who's likely picking up the phone is an intern, or a um, like an entry level staff person. So try not to get mad at them directly, because they're not going to be responsible for whatever it is that may be upsetting you, but they are going to be the messenger. And so just again, just like a warning of like separating the messenger from the message itself. Um and so you're going to call the office, someone will answer, and they'll say, hello, this is office, this is Senator so and so's office. For example, I live in California and one of our senators is Alex Padilla. So I might call Senator Padilla's office and they'll answer and be like, hello, this is Senator Padilla's office. How may I help you? And then the basic script for any public comment that you want to provide is going to be the following. You're going to say, hi, my name is so and so. I am a constituent from, and then say your zip code, and then I would like to leave a comment. So, again, if you're calling one of your federal officials and you call their office, the person who answers the phone answers and says, how may I help you? And your response will be three parts. Hi, my name is fill in the blank. I am a constituent from, say your zip code, and then I would like to leave a comment. Now, why is it important to mention that you are a constituent and then what your zip code is? They're going to pay a lot more attention to your call if they know that you are a voter in their district, right? And providing your zip code is how they can look up, where you are geographically and whether that falls within that elected official's district. And so they may ask for some additional contact information to confirm that. But saying that you are a constituent and providing your zip code is crucial for them to like then pay attention to the rest of what you're saying because you're a voter in their district. All right. So, hi, my name is so and so. I am a constituent from zip code blah, blah, blah. And I would like to leave a comment. And they'll say, okay, what's your comment? And then you can provide your comment. And it can be about something you've heard in the news. It can be about a bill or a law that you know about. It could be a personal experience that that you are having. It can be on a variety of topics. And an important thing to note is I think that for folks who do know that you have the ability to call your elected representatives, that it's only to complain about stuff. They voted a way that you didn't like, or you heard them speak on something and you didn't like, or there's an issue, an event, something that is happening in the country or in the globe that is upsetting, and you want to express your feelings about it, and want to ask, the federal government to do something about it. All of those things are absolutely valid, and positive feedback is also very much an option and is something I highly encourage folks to do as well. Positive feedback does matter. So let's say your representative voted in the way that you wanted. They spoke out on something that you support. They're sponsoring a bill that you like. Positive feedback, just like for us, for normal people, non-elected officials, it also works for elected officials as well. And people might be skeptical and think like, well, what does any of this matter? But it does, and they do track calls. Like these offices do track calls. They track calls from where calls are coming from, what topic people are calling on, and then what people's view is. They do track calls. This stuff does have an impact. And so um, I really encourage people to exercise their ability to contact their elected officials and share their views, both things that they are frustrated with, as well as things that they are happy about and they want to reinforce, particularly if it might be something that um, to reinforce for your elected representative of something that maybe was politically contentious, or it took a lot to take a stand about that. And so, for example, my congressional representative has called for a ceasefire in Palestine and Israel. And that's a very contentious issue at the time, right now. But I support a ceasefire, and so I have called my congressional representative's office and thanked my representative for supporting a ceasefire, for supporting an end to hostilities. And I want to show my support for that position that, um, you know, takes a lot in this political climate to stand up and to take that position. So again, that's just an example, but the point is that you can provide both positive feedback and thanking them for something, as well as providing negative feedback and like being upset about the way they voted or didn't vote or what they said or what they have done. So both positive and negative feedback are welcome, and you can share by calling your elected representatives' offices. So, a brief recap: you can call your federal elected officials by calling their office and providing your name, stating that you are a constituent from your zip code and that you would like to leave a comment. And um, this system um, works for all levels of government. You can use this to call your state elected officials. You can use this to call your local officials, like your mayor or your city council members or your school board members. And then you would just adjust accordingly. Instead of potentially saying what your zip code is, you could say what city you're from or what neighborhood you're from or what county you're from. But the same logic applies, that you want, in calling the office, you want to make it clear that you are a constituent, you are part of the district that they represent. Now, a question might arise as, well, Natasha, how do I know what my elected officials are doing? How do I even know what is happening? In addition to like your regular news sources, I would also recommend that you subscribe to the newsletters of your elected officials. I don't know if every elected official has a newsletter, but nowadays almost every elected official is on social media. Most of them have a newsletter, some type of um, email service where periodically they will send out updates via email. Some of them have blogs. If you go to their websites, you can subscribe to their newsletters to get email updates from them. And this applies to all kinds of elected officials. Not only, let's say, your members of Congress, but I know in California, for example, the Attorney General of California has a newsletter, and you can subscribe to it and learn about what his office is doing in the state of California. And there are many other elected officials that offer that. And going back briefly to the news sources, I'm just going to harp on again, as I've mentioned in many episodes, the importance of local news. I the, really support local news. So subscribing to whatever your local news outlet is, or following local journalists, is really important and can help you become educated as to who the relevant elected officials are. For example, I have spoken in other episodes about in Alameda County, the Board of Supervisors, which is county government. I think a lot of people are unaware of the role of county government where they live, but county government has a lot of say over a lot of very important aspects, including county government oftentimes has oversight over the sheriff, over the jails, over intercity coordination, transportation, the healthcare system, and many other aspects. So local government matters so much as well. And doing some Googling and following local news can help you figure out who these people are and what they are doing. In addition, as I was saying, subscribing to their newsletters, look on their website, see if they have that option, and following them on social media. Most elected officials these days have some type of social media presence. And, or, if you don't want to follow them, you can also just check their feeds and just see what it is that they're talking about. So there is a lot of information that is out there. Um, Once you know where to go, hopefully, then you will know what it is that they are doing and be able then to provide comment on that. Or if there's just something that is important to you that you would like to share your thoughts about, you can also do that. I think that sometimes there's this impression that, elected officials are on this higher pedestal and are inaccessible. And certainly some of them intentionally make themselves inaccessible, but they're elected representatives. They're supposed to represent the interests of their constituents. And so I really want to promote access and communication with the people that were elected to represent our interests. Okay. So, one other thing about the calls that I wanted to mention is that when you call, and you also have the option of asking to speak to the staff member who deals with that particular topic. Let's say you're calling about an issue related to education, or let's say you were calling about an issue related to foreign affairs, or let's say you're calling about an issue related to public safety, or you're calling about an issue related to um, the environment, whatever the topic may be, you could ask to speak to the staffer who deals with that particular issue. And at the federal level, for example, all of the members of Congress have staff that are focused on different areas. And so you can ask to speak to, can I speak to the staff member who deals with issues of education? And they may or may not transfer you to that person. They may transfer you to a voicemail box. Um, and you can just leave a voicemail with your issue. And the voicemail would be the same as your as what you would have said live. Hi, my name is so and so. I'm a constituent from zip code. And my comment is, and then share your comment. Now, I wanted to mention a couple of newsletters that are not specific to any elected official, but are other sources to consider to be updated on what is happening at the federal level. Again, there are many different resources at each level of government. But for the federal government, I just want to mention a couple that I know of. I'm sure there are many, many more. Just a couple to throw out there that, again, are newsletters that you could subscribe to help you stay up to date to what is happening in Congress. One of them is the Due Process Institute. Um, and the Due Process Institute, I started to follow because they have a criminal justice focus, and I tend to be aligned with their positions on criminal justice issues. They're billed as like a bipartisan group. I do think they lean more libertarian, conservative. Um, so there are definitely certain positions that they express that I wouldn't align myself with. Um, but there is a lot of overlap on criminal justice issues, and it's just good to get a different perspective. And I think generally they do a good job of giving me a pulse on what is happening in Congress on more or less a weekly basis. So that's the Due Process Institute. The other one is called govtrack.us. So gov, short for government, GOV, track, govtrack.us. And that is, um, talks about what kind of bills are being considered in Congress, as well as, other other updates. And so I would consider those two, Due Process Institute and govtrack.us, as beginning resources if you're looking for something to subscribe to that would give you some type of brief and organized window into what is happening at the federal congressional level. But again, those are just a couple of options. I am sure there are many, many more out there. So I covered the basics of how to call your elected official, what to say when you when someone answers the phone, or if you are going to leave a voicemail, suggestions on how you can be informed about what your elected officials are doing through either subscribing to their newsletters, subscribing to other newsletters that talk about government issues, following them on social media, as well as subscribing to local news. And then the last thing I wanted to share, and I will put more information about this in the show notes, is an event that is coming up for folks who are in Alameda County, California. There is an organization called the Justice Reinvestment Coalition that on May 23rd is offering a workshop on how to provide public comment. And it's called Advocacy Through Public Comment. The I will include some information about it in the show notes, as well as their Instagram handle, which has the latest information about it. They're at JRCOFAC, JRCOFAC. That is stands for Justice Reinvestment Coalition of Alameda County. And this event sounds really interesting because I have been talking about how to provide public comment by calling your elected officials. And this training is related but separate in that oftentimes governments will hold public hearings. It could be at the city council level, the school board level. It could be at the state level or the federal level, and the public is welcome to provide comment at those hearings. It could be about a proposed legislation. It could be a proposed regulation. It could be a proposed, policy, and members of the public generally are allowed to provide comment. Oftentimes it's very short. Each member of the public might only have 2 or 3 minutes to speak. But more people should know about that. And this training is designed to help people learn how to do that. And yeah, how to be involved in public forums and public hearings. And you may have seen on social media, I feel like I have seen a lot of clips on social media of public hearings, whether it's been on gun safety, or on like the book bans and Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, and people testifying at school board hearings against these ridiculous policies. Those are examples of public hearings where people are providing public comment as members of the public as to what they think about the proposed policy or the proposed law or whatever it may be. So, providing public comment at public hearings is something that the public can do. And this training that the Justice Reinvestment Coalition is doing is an opportunity for you to learn more about how to do that. And nowadays, a lot of hearings are not only in person, but are also virtual. So oftentimes nowadays, you also have the option to basically zoom in to a public hearing and virtually raise your hand. And then when they select you, similarly to when you call into an elected official's office, you will state your name, you will state where you're from, like what's the relevant jurisdiction. So if you're at a city council meeting, you might say what district of the city you live in, or just that you are a resident of that city. and then whatever your comment is. But anyway, I'll put information about this event in case folks want to go to that on May 23rd to learn more about how to provide public comment. But I'll leave it at there. That's just some like high level information about how do I leave a comment? How do I express my opinion to my elected officials? And those are some basic tips about that. Oh, last tip before we close out, which is important. Going back to your federal officials. Okay. So, your federal officials, as I mentioned, will have an office in DC, and they will also have offices in their home state. Now, oftentimes, the offices in like the bigger cities might be busier, because more people know about those offices and more people call those offices. And so sometimes the phone line might be busy or the voicemail box might be full. And so a tip around that is um, calling their less well-known offices or their offices in parts of the state that are not as populated. So let me give you a specific example. So I'm in California, as I've mentioned. One of my senators is Alex Padilla, and he has offices in San Francisco and Los Angeles, the big cities, but he also has an office in Fresno. And so as a constituent in the state of California, I can call any of his offices. I don't have to just call the office that is closest to me geographically. I can call any office in the state. So if I am having a hard time getting through um, to the office in one of the major cities, I can call any of his offices, including the office in Fresno, for example, which might not be as busy as the office in Los Angeles, for example. So your senator or your senator is likely to have many different offices throughout the state. And just a tip that you can call any of those offices and may want to consider calling one of the offices that's in a not the capital, for example, because that office might be less busy and you might be more likely, therefore, to be able to talk directly to a staff member and leave your comment rather than leaving a voicemail. Anyway, that would be the last tip for this episode. I hope that this has been informative. And on that note, I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.